What's up, Diablo 4 players? So massive emergency patch notes just came out of nowhere when we had the patch notes drop yesterday with the campfire chat. They decided to just throw out this massive amount of nerfs. There are some buffs, I will admit, but overall I'm going to say that there is two nerfs in particular that players are definitely going to be upset about, and let me go ahead and go over those first. So the first thing is the Crown of Lucion is going to be very, very hard to run. If some builds can run it, it still has some potential, but it is taking 50x damage nerf, and you lose out on extra damage with the core skills and some resource cost reduction. And we are getting some massive nerfs to the Locrans Talisman. These two items plus Ring of the Starless Skies was like the new godly combo that everyone and their grandma was going to be playing in Season 5. And while Ring of the Starless Skies did get a buff, which is good, the rest of the stuff, it got so heavily nerfed to the point where, like, I'm just kind of disappointed because we as content creators, like, as soon as the patch notes hit, we're dropping videos. I've seen a lot of other content creators talk about what's the best build, and then now, like, half of the stuff has to be reworked because these were in, like, every single build. Now, let's go over these nerfs, but I do want to say stick to the end because there is some good things to look forward to. It's not all nerfs, but, like, this is a pretty massive nerf. So let me go over the two main offenders here first that, you know, are going to be what makes players upset. So first off, Crown of Lucion, let's go over that. So it has some different stats. We have max life, lucky hit, shadow res out of nowhere. I don't get what's the point of just shadow res on this, but we get shadow res. We have cooldown reduction. So the changes here aren't really that bad. We did lose out on the +2 core skills, which is a huge source of bonus damage for, like, I would say 90% of builds. However, there were some builds that really didn't benefit off of it because you would just use something else, not a core skill, to get your bonus damage. The main thing that was really good here that we're losing out on is gain 75% resource cost reduction because the special power, well, it's going to make your resources go to the moon in terms of the cost. So we don't have that stat anymore. They just deleted it. And then on top of that, where it says each time you spend primary resource, you gain some X amount of damage. It rolls, let's just say, for the sake of this entire video, by the way, I'm just going to use the highest rolls, okay? So we get 25x damage, but we have 25% more increased resource cost for 4 seconds, and that stacks up to 5 times. So now the difference is each time we use a skill with resource, we only go up to 15x damage, and on top of that, we also have a resource cost increase of 30%. Now remember, that stacks 5 times, so that's going to be 25% more just off of every single one activating, including the 30%. So, like, it's going to be a lot more in terms of its resource cost. So it's 25% more resource on what it was already using. Now, there are builds like the Sorceress that can get, like, this new Fireball Explosion resource that you didn't have before, and there's also, like, Chain Lightning that you can gain resources. There's also Rogue with Inner Sight, but this was, like, the thing that everyone was going to be playing in, like, every single build. It was this and this. So now it's going to be super hard because you lose out on 75% resource cost reduction. That's a huge loss, right? And then you also get less damage. So the number that you get to now, if you have a perfect roll one, is 75x damage. You used to be able to get 125x, so it's a 50x damage nerf, equivalent to about 2-ish aspects. So that is a massive nerf over there. I'll get into the other things here, but I want to go over what I think is the most important. You know, this. It's so weird that this is like, it just kind of got thrown out there at the last second because, again, we had the campfire. Why didn't they say in the campfire, hey guys, we're heavily nerfing the best things from the PTR? They just threw this out. Again, just like really fresh off the press here. But Locrans Talisman is also getting a pretty big nerf. So let's go over this thing as well. So how it used to work is you gain attack speed, all stats, crit strike damage, maximum resource, and then you would gain 0.1 to 0.5 critical strike chance per point of primary resource. You have up to 50%. And then you would be able to have it so it would also give you each point of primary resource above 100 would give you 1% critical strike damage instead. Now the newer change with this is now going to be the stats on the item are pretty garbage. We had attack speed, which is good, all stats pretty good, crit strike damage, max resource. Now it's resistances, really low percent all stats. I really wish there was like a 1 in front of this, like a 12 or 13, but like 2 to 3, pretty low. We also have maximum resource cut in half, and then we get resistances instead of attack speed. Attack speed, obviously, much better. There's a lot of things that maybe internally they're like, okay, you know what, 99% of the player base that's quitting the game before they even reach max level, their resistances are trash. Let's go ahead and just add resistances like on the other thing where, like, I don't know why we're getting resistance on the Crown of Lucion. And then now a lot of stuff just has resistances. My guess is because like a lot of people don't know to res cap themselves, but this is like an end game like item anyways. So anyways, let's go ahead and check out the rest of the thing because it's getting another nerf here. So now we go from 0.1 to 0.4, which essentially is like a, you know, you're cutting off by 0.1. So you're basically losing out 20% of the stats there. And then you're also losing out on the ability to have up to like 50% critical strike chance to 40. So it's another like nerf of 20% there. And then we also have another nerf over here from going from 1% to 0.2. So that's like divided by 5. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So at this point, you might just consider running a regular amulet. Now, unless you get a really good rolled amulet, the other thing is still usable, but it is heavily nerfed. And on top of the nerfs already that exist with the Locrans, wherever it is, we also have the maximum resource got cut in half, and the value that you get off the resource is already diminished. So again, heavy nerfs to those two items in particular. So players will probably be set with that specific emergency like nerf. But let's go over the rest, because like I said, stick to the end. There is some good things to look forward to, but like it's just like weird that we got this massive nerf. Those two items again are very key for almost every single build, but now you may not need to play it in every single build, which is weird because now we're going back to like, okay, Harlequin is just the best helm for 90% of builds. But again, it is possible to use, and I still think it's probably still pretty decent. But yeah, losing out on 75 resource cost reduction, that's like 3 or 4 stats rolls, right? If you look at like 10%, 13% like on a ring, it's a pretty big nerf. Now, there are some buffs here. So Endurant Faith, now we get cooldown reduction. I'm going to kind of go back and forth so you guys can kind of see, because with this, for some reason, yesterday when they dropped the patch notes, it was really nice and well done. They showed the old one and they showed the new one side by side, so you knew what was the difference. With this now, we have to kind of use these other third-party websites. So Endurant Faith over here used to give you core skills, but it didn't have attack speed or crit, so it kind of like sucked for that reason, but it's a defensive stat anyways in terms of how it's designed. Now you get cooldown reduction. Does this really matter? No. It like when you would be damaged, basically it's supposed to let you survive one shots. I don't think anyone's really going to care about this unless we have actual hard content. Probably this is a skip, but you get cooldown reduction on now. Shard of Verithel, massive nerf over here as well. So what is nice, you get 50% damage. That's new. It used to not have this, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be additive, which is basically forget about it. It's a small like thing that I wouldn't really care about. The main nerf is this used to be up to 300x increased damage for your basic skills, now costing resource, which would be really good with Crown Lucion. It had a really cool combo. Now, you could still definitely use this item. This item isn't like, oh, okay, I can't play this. Any basics build will still absolutely use this, but it is heavily nerfed. 100x damage, I mean, you get 20 to 30 on like one roll, and so losing out on 100x damage, yeah, that is pretty dang big. Rakanos Wake Boots, these boots are gods here already. They're basically just best in slot. So you get cooldown reduction, you get also, like these, like there's not one bad stat on this item. Now, the non-physical damage is really good because on like Sorceress, you get your, when you have bonus to cold damage, you get some sort of thing with like Frigid Fate or whatever. So there's a lot of builds that can definitely make great use out of it. And as cooldown reduction on boots, you normally don't get that. The main thing that makes these boots so godly is that you get res to all elements, which is great because it just lets you res cap without really requiring you to get shadow res here, and you get poison res here, you throw the gems in. Now you can just throw in whatever you want, and you're basically going to be res capped very easily. In fact, there's a lot of these resistances. I already mentioned Locrans Talisman over here. We don't need to complain about that, but that was a pretty big disappointment. Inevitable Fate, when an enemy falls below some life, your damage, with any of your damage over time effects, you get some sort of damage here. I wish they just like specified what is this number on like an average level 100, because it doesn't really help me here with these newer changes. As much as I think players would want. Next up though, this is actually getting a buff here. There is a pretty cool thing that this is an utility slot. So what Wild Bolt does is it every 2 seconds, or 0.5, which is actually pretty crazy. Let me go show you guys the number before. It was every 2 to 3.5, and now it's every 0.5 seconds. We just suck in all the enemies. I guarantee you this has got to be nerfed, man. There's no way that they're gonna let this go through. Every half a second, you just keep on pulling in enemies. That seems incredibly busted. But now, it can't pull the same enemies in, but this thing just seems super busted. So you pull in all the enemies, they take 30% bonus damage, used to be 10, and it occurs may occur every 5 seconds per enemy. So I'm not sure how that registers. Does it mean like, okay, we pulled in 5 enemies, so then this number gets multiplied times like 5 for the duration? Or does that mean like each individual enemy can only be pulled every 5 seconds. So, I mean, it's every 0.5 seconds. That is crazy. Again, we'll have to wait and see kind of how it works in the actual game. And then we have Sticker Thought, which gains some sort of thorns after channeling. You can use that. And then we have Sly Steps. After losing amount of life, you're going to be using an equipped defensive subterfuge macabre skill will trigger, and it can only occur once every, again, I'm going to mention all the lowest stats, every 5 seconds. It doesn't work with mobility skills, but you can get increased duration of, let's say, the ice armor, and then you can have 100% uptime on like the ice armor, which could actually be pretty dang good when you combo it with Dark Dance. So if you run Dark Dance, as long as you're above a certain amount of life, the skills are going to be costing a set of amount of primary resource. If you have any like good amount of regen, or if you run the brand new Undarlos, which gives you flat number of life on hit and have a really low amount of life, you could basically just keep Dark Dance up 100% of the time, and that can actually be pretty good because that's 80x damage on just one of the rolls. If you run this, I'm not sure if this is, let me double check on this for you guys. If we go to Dark Dance over here, let's go check out what the numbers were over here. This is considered resource, so it's only on rings. So you can't run this in like a two-hander and get like 160x damage. But next up we have Creeping Death. So dot damage is increased by 30 to 50% for each crowd control effect on the target. Unstoppable monsters and stagger bosses automatically take 90 to 150 bonus dot damage. That's pretty nice. That's going to be a nice little buff over there. Prudent Heart, you become immune to damage for like 2.5 seconds or 4 seconds. When you lose more than 25% life on a single hit, it can't occur more than once every 20 seconds. Then we have Barbarian with the Unbroken Chain over here. We have a pretty nice, huge amount of ultimate. I don't know if there's anything off the top of my head that scales with ultimate damage on Barbarian, but let me know down below if there is a way to actually make that ultimate like actually good. I'm pretty sure it's meant to be utility because it gives you a massive amount of cooldown reduction with the build versus, I believe, like the Chain Grasp cooldown. But yeah, this is for like this build that you're supposed to spam the ultimate with. But maybe you can make an ultimate spamming build. The third blade got a change over here. I don't think this really matters, to be honest. It was already pretty weak. This is the thing where like your weapon mastery skills now count as core skills and have no cooldown. As far as I'm aware of, I didn't see good performance from it. I checked out Rob, Wudijo. I don't think anyone really made a really good build with it. It was like struggling to do Pit 100, so I just don't see it being very good with Barbarian. On top of the Barbarian just getting a massive amount of nerfs overall around as well. And then other aspects over here with Executioners. If you kill an enemy with Earthquake, it spawns an Earthquake. If you kill an enemy with Overpower, it spawns in an Earthquake. Unfortunately, it's not more than once every 6 seconds, so that's kind of unfortunate. And then the Fortress, for every 10% of life you're missing, you gain extra damage reduction, so it's kind of cool. Anger Management took a little bit of a nerf in the Fury, but this is really not that big of a deal. You just get a greater affix like Fury per second in your chest, and you'll be okay. For the Druid the Basilisk, we get more crowd control damage, we get earth attack speed, crit damage, physical, critical strike chance against stunned enemies. That's a pretty massive amount over here for that staff. Then when you hit an enemy with an earth skill, you petrify them. As far as I'm aware of, like you couldn't just perma-petrify things. I was hoping that it would just work, like you would keep on getting your ultimate. As far as my tests on the PTR, unless they're like reworking the skill to function like the way I think it should function, you don't actually get like the actual petrify when you put in the points. It doesn't work like that, but it's weird because other skills, if you proc something off of like an enchant and you have like the other bonus points into like the advanced one, it would work, but this one does not work, so you don't get that crazy amount of cooldown reduction like you wanted to when you would petrify an enemy and you kill them. It doesn't reduce the cooldown. If that changes, I mean, this could be good, but like the whole thing is revolved around this. I mean, these stats aren't necessarily terrible, but it really requires you to have this work, and also it's kind of bad for bosses. Anyways, since, well, it's only crit strike chance against the stun, and, well, you're going to potentially stun them, the boss is going to need to still build up that stagger bar, but then you get the bonus against the boss with Petrify anyways. But again, it doesn't work like the way you would want it to work. This is a brand new ring. It used to be a pair of gloves, but what's cool with it is you gain 100x damage and you get unlimited spirit. So again, you can maybe run like Crown of Lucion in certain builds, but again, the 75 resource cost reduction, big disappointment. We're getting a bunch of resistance, and then I don't know why we're getting so many of these like just random resistances on stuff. I mean, it's a ring, so this one kind of makes sense, but it'd be cool to see the rings break kind of the rules a little bit more, and then we get some crit strike chance, movement speed while Cataclysm is active. So that's kind of cool. You get to move even faster because you're probably going to want to play with like Flicker Step to keep it up. Moon Range with enemies killed, there's a chance there's a wolf companion that would come out. You get some extra wolves, and it's a lucky hit against bosses, so that's kind of cool. And then Rejuvenating when you drop below 20 spirit, there's a chance, but I don't know if people will play that. Spirit Bond, 20 to 35% of the damage you take is shared amongst your companions. Additionally, your companions can't die. I believe this number got increased by a little bit. So, yeah, let's go check out the actual numbers here to make the video make a little bit more sense. So, it used to get 17.5, really random number, basically doubled. I don't know why it wasn't at least 25 before, but nonetheless, it's getting buff. The Mortar Crux Dagger over here, when consuming a corpse, has a chance to create a decaying skeleton simulacrum. It will seek enemies, it can't attack. When it dies, it explodes. It's treated as a macabre skill, so that can work with other things. The main problem that I had with this, if any of you guys have played with this, it takes, I believe, 6 to 7 seconds for that corpse to actually work. So it's just going to be outclassed by basically everything. There's another thing that actually is really good for minions. If you're a minion player, get excited, because there is a massive buff. But Path of Trag'Oul over here, we're getting some evade charges, we're getting some armor, movement speed, bone prism, cooldown reduction. Get some bone skills, bone traps in a larger area and fires those bone splitters at them. Increase your essence for by 2 for 10 seconds each time it hits an enemy. Then we have the legendary aspect, the Shade Mist. Your minions become shadow imbued, dealing some sort of amount of shadow damage over duration. Again, I wish they kind of specified this. So of the Cursed Aura, you gain an aura that automatically affects nearby enemies with Decrepify and Iron Maiden for 4 seconds. And on top of that, it's going to spread to additional enemies every set duration. And then each minion drains 1 to 2 essence per second, but deals a huge amount of bonus damage. Now, this is pretty crazy. Again, a lot of builds lost out on stuff because every build was considered using Crown of Lucion, right? So this originally gave you up to 45, and it's an offensive one, which means you should be able to put it on your two-hander, right? So each minion drains more resource, but they gain up to 125 bonus damage. Now, with no minions, it still applies to you. It drains essence per second. So if you do run a bunch of minions, you can get a bunch of greater affix like essence per second. And I actually think this could be really good. I would actually consider this a massive win for minions. So if you're a minion player, you're probably just going to get more damage now, and it's going to be awesome, because before with Crown of Lucion, you would still have to spend resources, so it made it kind of awkward to play. But now you have a smoother build to potentially play, because your helmet slot will still be open, because you didn't, well, you might not want to play Crown of Lucion on a lot of builds anymore, but nonetheless, this is actually pretty dang awesome for minions. So minions are looking good. Now, Umber Crux took a pretty big nerf. Now, I'm not going to sign this item out as like useless. It's still godly. We get an extra 50% damage. Let's kind of compare it before. If we go ahead and grab this item, because this is one of the best items like actually in the game. Let's go over here because I like how they put it right in the middle. So Umber Crux over here, you can see it used to give you 2 shade totems with its special ability, and it used to deal 30% damage of whatever you dealt with the totem. Now, it said you could only have 2. I could definitely summon more than 2, so if somehow that bug still stays, I don't know if it was with like a shadow minion, but I 100% know that you could have way more than 2 of those shade totems. How that interaction works, I don't know, but if we can figure it out, I'll show you guys when we do drop the gameplay and the build guide for it. Although we already have the build guide, it's the same. You just don't get 1 more shade totem, and it just gives you 20 instead of 30. Now, it used to kind of double dip, because one totem would do damage to the other totem that would do damage to the other totem, because it didn't say except for the totem, so you got crazy damage with whatever you were playing for rogue. Is it still going to be good? Absolutely. It's still going to be one of the top tier items, and almost every single rogue build will want to try to put this in, because you get the damage to count as a trap skill, so it's like when the enemy is hit by like a trap, so that's going to be good. And then on top of that, you're able to obviously get the ability to just deal massive amounts of AoE damage. I like it, and because it counts as another target, you can have something ricochet off of it. Just one of these existing allows Heartseeker to have the ricochet shot, so it is pretty massive. Even if it's just one, it's still really, really, really good. But we'll have to wait and see if we can get more of these out. Then we have Shroud of Condurus. You gain some non-physical damage. You get Shadow Res, and then you get extra like movement speed after evade. The casting of the Dark Shroud makes you immune for 2 seconds. Our evade cooldown is increased. And invading while Dark Shroud leaves some sort of explosion. It is actually kind of a decent damage too. It can hit for a decent amount of damage. BTR, like, it was easy, like 1 mil plus damage with like a very subpar. So like open world content, it's going to be amazing. But for like super far end game bosses, is it going to be that great? I mean, the immunity could leave the doors open for some cool builds with rogue, but moving on to legendary aspects of True Sight. Now, this thing got changed over here because I didn't really see some really great use out of it. So how it used to work was that you would deal 70 to 100x increased crit strike damage to enemies marked by Inner Sight. Now, damage to Inner Sight targets will always crit and deal additional crit damage. So it's always going to crit. So that's going to be pretty nice. But again, if you were to run like Locrans Talisman, you have 100% crit anyways. There's a lot of different rogue ways to get 100% crit. And this is another way where, well, if you want to run that, it's a pretty decent amount. Could be something to consider. I would not sign this out as useless because it's always going to crit. Even if you're like 80% crit, it's still going to be a nice thing to have. And you can build that up quite good and super fast. Cold Clip actually got a buff, surprisingly. It's actually already really good. And then it's getting, I believe it was a 20, and now it's another, like, almost doubled. Here we're going to 35. So buff to that. Cladstein, we get some extra bonuses to agility and subterfuge. I don't think anyone's using that. So the actual conduit. Now, they didn't mention any specific interaction over here, and I'm really curious to see if this still works with Crown Lucion. The sorcerer is still absolutely top tier. But anyways, they have a chance for this projectile to cast twice. We get damage reduction, resource generation, and maximum. So 32% maximum resource just means, well, now the Locrans Talisman becomes a lot less bad because you just get a percent. So the more that you get, the more damage that you're going to get. And so maybe they had to nerf it because Sork was going to be out of control. But Chain Lightning is over here. Then we have Power. The Chain Lightning alternates between you and it seeks up to enemies, does some damage. I mean, it's really hard to see what this like actual number is in game because it's going to continuously starting to drain mana, and then it's going to do a huge explosion. So if this still works the same way, even if Crown Lucion, again, has that nerf, I still think that this is going to be a top tier build, probably still one of the best builds in the game, because they didn't mention some sort of bug fix, and they specifically targeted the Druid when they said, oh, the Druid's Creeper is not going to do that crazy amount of damage anymore because that was a bug, but they have not stated anything. But who knows? Maybe there's going to be another emergency patch that they need to drop right before the season starts, and I hate that because as much as I like them giving out the patch before the season comes out, when you make a build and then, you know, you have to redo everything because they just changed something last second. You know, PoE's done this as well. So it just kind of sucks. But if this works, guys, I'm telling you, Sorcerers will still be the absolutely top tier. I'll be dropping the build and the gameplay, even though it's going to have the buff Crown Lucion, because that's obviously from the PTR. They have not stated that it's like getting changed. Now, Vox Omnium has been bad. I said it was bad. I believe it was Wudijo's video had a showcase of it. Now, I don't know if they fixed it. I had told them as a Diablo partner, like, hey, this actually does not work. Like with I think it was Ball Lightning, and then also on Fire Wall, it like literally doesn't work. So when you would use some of these things that would count as like core skills, you're supposed to get these basic skills to shoot out. It does not work. Another problem with this thing is like it works off of your last two non-core skill casts. So what happens, it says cats. Matching the elements of your last two non-core skill cats. Okay, but anyways, obviously this means core skill casts. So how this works is you just get two instances of your basic skills. You could just run a two-handed staff and then just run 200 or 100% chance to get doubles anyways. And then you would have a staff that maybe is better, and you could still have your aspect on because that's just a temper, right? Now these do more damage, but the problem that you have with this is that your first projectile goes in the middle, and then the additional ones go out to the side, so you literally don't hit your target. It's really bad. This item, I really think it needs a rework. So what this needs to do is it has to shoot out 3. If it shoots out 3, you can actually hit your target that you shoot at, because the way it works, again, it shoots out your core skill shoots in the middle, and then the other projectiles shoot out like a trident, but like it's a very large fan. It's like multiple projectiles if you played Path of Exile. It's like the lesser. They shoot out this way, not the way that you want it to. Like you want it to be like an inverse cone, not like an outward cone. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. But that's why this item is bad. And it literally was so bugged that like half the skills don't even work with it. Like as in, if you push your core skill, it does nothing. So hopefully they can mention that. I don't know if I haven't scrolled through here, but hopefully they can fix that as well. Winter Touch. At first I got really excited. I'm like, whoa, hold on. When enemies are frozen, they take 2.5 times damage. That's busted. It doesn't actually work like that. That's a flat number, and it doesn't actually have the exact number, unfortunately, that we're getting. So I don't know if this is a buff or nerf. It used to do 225 to 450, but what is that number? I don't know, because it doesn't really make sense. But the damage counts as a frost skill, this one counts as a shock, and then this one counts as like a fire. So what this can count as, if you need to activate certain skills to maybe get like Talrot or something, it could work for it. But would you sacrifice an aspect for it? Hell no. It's not worth it at all. And then on top of that, the player that would open up the pit would only get like the maximum amount of materials, and everyone gets that as well. But that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, guys. What do you think about these like emergency like patch notes? I really just, again, it's kind of weird that they came out and like gave us massive nerfs to the best items in the game from the PTR. And again, now some builds may not be able to play these at all. Like again, because you lose out on 75% resource cost reduction, you can get a ring, you can get like Starless Skies and get 50%, but then if you get it increased 30 times 5, that's a lot of resource, man. So you're going to have to go crazy with solving resources, and then you're going to do 0 DPS. And on top of that, you lose 50x damage already with the nerf, and then you also lose out on the core skills, which would be additional, I don't know, 15% like of the base damage of it, which is a pretty big thing to lose out on. And what do you get in return? You get Shadow Rest. But I don't know. Overall, I would say there are some buffs. So who is the winner here? I would say the Necromancer is the winner here. The massive amount of damage that you got. I mean, you go from what was it? It was like 125, right? It's 125 of the damage. I don't remember where it was. Was it this one? No. Let's see if we go back. It was the one for the. Was it True Sight? No. It was the Minions out Greater Feast. I mean, you went from 45 at the highest. Oh, Great Feast. Okay, there we go. You went from 45 to 125. So like basically tripled it, right? So they basically tripled it, and then yeah, if you run this on a two-hander, I mean, Necromancer is going to be eating good. Rogue is still pretty dang strong. I'm just mostly disappointed with Crown of Lucion on the other one, because now we're just going back to kind of what we were running before. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here and want to be up to date, and check out the pin for a bunch of the builds. I'm going to have to update a lot of these, but I still think Crown of Lucion, as well as Locrans Talisman, they are definitely not like terrible to the point where they're unplayable, but it is some significant nerfs. So let me know, guys, now with this new updated patch, what do you plan to play? I might actually play Sork now. Peace out, guys.